Hi everybody, welcome to today's story time. We're on the last chapter of the fourth book in the Universal series, A Feather of Faith. Footprints of Faith. Ali snapped out of her daze and realised that everyone was staring at her. She coughed nervously and they all smiled. We were waiting to see when you would get your piece of luck back, Molly said, tapping her feet excitedly. Well, I know it has returned, Ali replied with a joyous smile. The sun climbed higher in the sky and fully lit the land. Shall we head back for some breakfast? Asked Ben, tapping his stomach. They all nodded in unison. I am so hungry, cried Hugh dramatically, pretending to faint with starvation. Ben pulled up the anchor and lay it on the bottom of the boat. He started up the engine and the boat soared towards the jetty. Ali grabbed clumps of her hair and tried to hold it back as it tossed and turned in the wind. As the jetty approached, they saw a figure making its way down towards them. Hugh and Molly began to wave frantically. Morning, John, they shouted at the top of their lungs. John lifted off his tweed cap and waved it in the air in greeting. Before even being asked, Hugh took hold of the rope and got ready to throw it to John. Ben slowed Destiny down and slotted her back in line. John took hold of the rope and secured it to the jetty. He held out his hand and one by one guided everybody off the boat. Cracking morning to watch the sunrise, John said with a smile. It was spectacular, Hugh agreed, raising his hands up in the air. The sound of their footsteps on the wooden jetty echoed around the loch. When they reached the cabin, Molly collected the life jackets, ran inside and hung them up. We'd best be heading back to the hotel for some breakfast, said Ali. We've got a long drive ahead of us. After that, she pulled Hugh in for a hug. And you did it again, Hugh. That was another incredible map of dreams, Ben said as he ruffled his hair. Hugh smiled shyly. You're welcome, he muttered. Molly bounced up and behind Hugh and leapt onto him. A true Molly hug. Thank you, brother. You're the best, she exclaimed as she squeezed the air out of him. Bye, John, said Ben. Thanks for everything. He shook John's hand warmly. Any time you back up this way, don't forget to drop in and say hi, replied John kindly. Absolutely, Ben agreed with an enthusiastic nod. They made their way along the road, walking a little slower this time to savour every moment and store the images in their minds. You know, I think I'm starting to understand it, said Molly as she swung her arms. What's that? Ali asked. The lessons life gives us to build up our strength, Molly explained. It's pretty clever, really, because life won't give us something we can't handle. We might think we won't make it through because it's a lot of effort, but actually, if you just keep chipping away at it, you become stronger and you do make it through. And you become a better person too. Albeit a little tired at the end though, she concluded. There she goes again, wise Molly teaching us all life's truth, Ali said as she pretended to tickle her. She gave her a proud kiss on top of her head. They stepped through the entrance of their hotel, now alight with the morning sun. Good morning, greeted a familiar voice from the doorway of the restaurant. Would you like your usual table? Hugh beamed a giant smile. You are my hero, he said to the waiter. Lead the way. They made their way to the table and sat down in their seats. Same as usual, asked the waiter. He didn't think he would need his notepad and pen this time. Ali nodded her agreement and Ben tucked a piece of stray hair behind her ear. So, is everything all sorted for heading back tomorrow? He asked gently. I think so, replied Ali. All the paperwork is complete, money transferred, belongings packed. We're ready to head home. The word home now felt so wonderful, like a sanctuary, a piece of heaven. I'm looking forward to going home and seeing Tom and Grandpa Billy, Molly said. A wave of pure relief washed over her. The fear of not being able to stay with Ali had been well and truly vanquished. What shall we do when we get back? Hugh asked as he began to plan. I think take a break and just enjoy life, Ali said, exhausted. Yeah, it'll be nice that the one thing we have to accomplish are eating, sleeping and pooing, shouted Hugh mischievously. Ali frowned her disapproval. What? Hugh protested. It's true. You would become very poorly if you didn't. The waiter returned with their breakfast. As he placed them on the table, he turned to Ben. And here is some extra toast for you, he said with a smile. Thank you, breathed Ben, admiring the feast in front of him. Shall I reserve a table for dinner? The waiter asked, glancing back at the diary. I'm afraid not, replied Ali. We'll be heading off after this. Thank you for everything. You have treated us like royalty, she added gratefully. Well, that was what I was instructed to do by a lady called Jane, the waiter said as he recalled the phone call. She told me what you had been through, and I think her words were, "You best treat them like royalty, otherwise I'll be up there myself to give you a talking to," the waiter said, pulling a mocking, scared face. Quite a feisty woman, if I may say so. They all erupted into laughter. Ali put the last bite of breakfast into her mouth and chewed it slowly. She sighed with satisfaction. "Now I'm set to hit the road again," she stated, placing her napkin down next to her empty plate. "I'll miss this place," said Hugh. "It's like a hidden treasure that's there for everyone to see, but that most pass by." Hugh glanced out of the window and watched a bird glide along the top of the water. "Right then, gang," instructed Ben as he stood up. "Let's go and pack up, load up, and make some tracks in that tarmac." "Mum, can I borrow a pen?" asked Hugh. Ali lifted up her bag and sifted through it. "There you go, monkey," she said as she handed him the locator pen. Hugh delicately wrote a note on his napkin, then stood up to join everyone else. He left the napkin strategically at the head of the table for the waiter to find. They paraded back up to their rooms and proceeded to pack their bags up once more. It got a little easier each time as their load appeared lighter. Molly and Hugh took it in turns to help each other carry their bags down to the reception where Ben and Ali were already waiting. "Thanks, champ," Ben said, taking their bags out to the car. Ali was busy at the reception desk. She handed back the keys and paid their bill. "We hope to see you again soon," said the receptionist with a well-practiced smile. "We won't be forgetting this place in a hurry," replied Ali as she took one final look around. Ali made her way outside to Hugh, Molly and Ben, who were already waiting in the car. She paused on the steps of the hotel and took in one final deep breath of air. "Is everyone settled in?" she inquired when she climbed in. "I'm ready for another epic drive. Maybe this time you'll all see a bit more of it, not the back of your eyelids," she chuckled as she started the car and navigated it back down the country roads. Ben watched the country rolling on by as they slipped onto the motorway and back towards the faster pace of society. He pondered to himself, sometimes going down a new road for the first time is easier as the excitement and eagerness consumes you. But if you're going down a familiar road and you still have that same feeling, it shows that the road is the right path to take, and to keep feeling those moments of excitement on a road well travelled, well, that's when you're truly living life to the fullest. Ben smiled to himself at the thought. "What are you smiling at?" Ali asked, glancing across at Ben. He reached out, placed his hand on her shoulder and gave it a squeeze. "Just life. Living life to the fullest," he whispered. "I spy with my little eyes something beginning with J," Hugh said with a mischievous smile. Is it a jumper?" asked Molly. "Nope," replied Hugh a little smugly. "Is it John?" said Molly, scratching her head. Hugh began to laugh. "No, silly, he's back up by the lock. You'll never guess it," he stated, beginning to feel victorious. "Is it jewellery then?" tried Molly. Her eyes were bright with delight. Surely this was right. Hugh shook his head. "Nope." "Ben, please help me," implored Molly. "Okay, Hugh," Ben asserted. "We need some clues. Can we see it now?" he asked. "Not right now," Hugh replied. "Will we see it soon?" Ben continued. "Yes, really soon," Hugh said, getting excited. I've got it, cried Molly. "It's Jane." Just as Ali pulled up outside the house, Jane stepped out holding a fresh cup of coffee. Molly vigorously pointed at her. "It's Jane," she said with a satisfied grin as Ali turned off the engine. They all piled out of the car and filed into the house. "So, how was your adventure?" asked Jane, stepping out of the way as Hugh and Molly darted through. They stopped in front of her like two leaping frogs. "It was incredible," Molly began. "Absolutely amazing," continued Hugh. "We made a wish at the waterfall, and then we went up to the Locks of Luck, and where we met John and rode in Destiny." Ali walked into the house and hugged Jane. "Thank you so much for lending us your car," she said. "The kettle's not long boiled," Jane said as she motioned for Ali to join her in the kitchen. Ali turned to face the leaping frogs. "Seeing as you two still have got plenty of energy, please could you bring the bags in and put them in the living room?" she asked. "But only take out what you need for tonight and leave the rest here. We have an early start in the morning to catch our flight." Ali couldn't prevent a yawn escape from her mouth. "Ali, I heard that from in here," called Jane. "Come up and get a cup of tea before you fall asleep standing up," she instructed. Ali shuffled into the kitchen as Ben entered the house with the first handful of bags. Molly and Hugh slipped past to gather the remaining ones and bring them inside too. "Hi, Jane," greeted Ben as he placed the bags down and walked into the kitchen. Jane handed him a cup of coffee. "Did it all go well?" she asked, eager for gossip. "Better than any of us could have imagined," replied Ben. "But I'll let Hugh and Molly do the talking and show you the pictures. I know they can't wait to." Ali yawned again and her mouth stayed open for longer than felt comfortable. "I am going to have to give in," she muttered. "Thanks again, Jane," she said, giving her another hug. "Always here to help," said Jane with a smile. "I'll see you in the morning to drop off." Jane couldn't hide her sadness. Things felt empty without Ali and her weekly gossips over the kitchen table. Ali nodded. Another yawn thundered out and she turned and made her way upstairs. Jane and Ben made their way through to the living room where Hugh and Molly were already flicking through the pictures. "Do you have a printer here, Hugh?" asked Molly as she paused at the picture of them all sitting around the dinner table. "Yeah, just in here," confirmed Hugh as he went to turn it on. Molly rummaged through her bag for her memory book whilst Hugh printed off the picture. "Here you go," said Ben, handing Molly a pen. Molly sat down and placed the picture on the next page. She smiled knowingly as her pen streamed across the page. "Love is there, not only just to share the good times, but to give you strength through the tough times. It is knowing that if you hold out your hand, there will always be a hand there to take hold of it." She slowly closed the book and put it back into her bag. "I am ready to go back home," she said, hugging Ben. Ben smiled. "Me too," he sighed. "Who knows what your grandpa and Tom have been up to, or what the ranch looks like for that matter." Ben began to wonder. He hadn't had a single phone call since he'd left. It began to dawn on him for the first time that he didn't know how the ranch was. His anxiety bubbled away inside. "Night-night, Jane," said Molly as she gave Jane a hug. "See you in a few hours," Jane replied with a smile. Hugh's gaze drifted casually around. Memory upon memory replayed themselves in his mind. There were so many that were attached to this house. He too began to unthread each stitch that held him to this life that was no longer his. "I'll be heading off as well," said Jane. "Glad you got back all right," she added as she got up and placed her cup on the coffee table. "Thanks for getting everything ready for our return," Ben said appreciatively. "No problem at all," Jane called behind her as she stepped out the front door and into the cooling night. Ben turned to Hugh. "Right, champion, I think it would be right for us to, what is it you guys say? Head up the apples and pears?" Ben was clearly delighted with himself. Hugh shook his head. "You're a quick learner," he acknowledged. Hugh stood up and started to make his way up the stairs. Ben locked the front door and turned off the lights. Hugh paused at the top and waited for Ben to catch up. When Ben reached the last step, Hugh flung his arms around him, and he felt Ben melt into his hug. "See you in a few hours, champion," Ben said, kissing the top of Hugh's head. Hugh meandered into his room and flicked on the light switch. The room became illuminated, and so did his map of dreams. He very carefully looked at each individual picture and felt a buzz begin to build inside. "I'm not sure when I'll be back again," he thought to himself. He put on his pyjamas, peeled back his duvet, but then paused. He stepped away from his bed and went to find another old empty school book, a pen and some glue. He sat down on his bed and wrote, "A diary of my dreams achieved," in big bold letters on the front. He opened up the book to find the first blank page, and he looked up at his wall of dreams. His gaze fell on the photo of the plane. He carefully took it down, stuck it into his book and wrote the date next to it. He then reached up and took the photo of the country fair and rodeo and stuck that next to it. One by one, the photos began to transfer from the wall into the book. Hugh felt a huge sense of joy. He hadn't realised just how much had been achieved since he'd first created his map of dreams. Hugh took down the final few photos of the dreams he had achieved. He flicked through his book and realised that every photo was the building block of his new life. Moment by moment, memory by memory, they all joined together to create a picture of his new life. Hugh chuckled to himself as he felt bubbles of happiness in his stomach fizz and pop with joy. He looked up at the photos still left on the wall. They were of the dreams he was yet to receive. He scratched his chin. "What to do with these?" Do I give up on them or throw them away, or should they come with me and be added to my other dream wall at the ranch? He pondered this thought for a moment. I can't give up on my dreams because that would mean that I was giving up on myself and those parts of me that I want to grow or even discover. Hugh stood up on his bed and took down the pictures. He took them just behind the front cover of the book. I'll add them to my other dream wall when the time is right. As my past becomes a blank slate, my future is brightly decorated with opportunities, experiences, and endless possibilities. He placed the book by his clothes, ready for packing in the morning. He finally slithered under his duvet. He pulled it up so high that only his face was showing. He blinked twice, but by the third time his eyelids stayed shut. Hugh lazily rolled over, but his eyes shot open with surprise when he felt something by the side of him. "Molly!" he yelled out in a shock. "Morning, Sleepy," whispered Molly. "It's time to go home," she said. She was laid by his side, already fully dressed in her coat and shoes. Hugh scowled. "It can't be time yet," he muttered, trying to soothe himself back to sleep. Molly huffed. She was too excited to sleep anymore. "Not quite," she said with a cheeky grin, "but in 2 minutes and 17 seconds, Ali's alarm will be going off." Hugh pulled his duvet up around himself, trying to savour the last 2 minutes of sleep. "Why are you so tired anyway?" asked Molly as she fidgeted beside him. "I haven't been asleep for long," explained Hugh. "There was something I needed to do before we left." Molly looked up at the blank wall and it dawned on her what Hugh meant. She rolled over and gave him a hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered as she swung her legs over him. As her feet touched the ground, the sound of Ali's alarm rang out. "Perfect timing," Molly said, quite pleased with herself. Molly felt the feet thump to the beat of the alarm as she made her way downstairs. When she reached the bottom, she filled her lungs as full of air as she could. "Wakey, wakey, sleepyheads!" she yelled at the top of her voice before disappearing into the kitchen to put the kettle on for Ali and Ben. "I think someone is excited to be heading back to the ranch," said Ben with a sleepy smile as he wrapped his arms around Ali. He glanced across and was surprised to see Ali just laying there, staring up at the ceiling. He propped himself up on his elbow. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, beginning to get concerned. Ali let out a deep, contemplative sigh, but Ben's nerves grew as the moment of silence did too. Ali blinked and her thought trance was momentarily broken. She looked across at Ben and smiled. "I don't know how she's done it," Ali began. "I look around this place and I know that I need to do the same, but I don't know if I can." Ben stayed silent. Ali saw the worry wash across his face. "Oh no, not like that," she reassured. "I can't wait to get back to the ranch and continue our life together. I just don't want to have to deal with this. I kind of wish someone would sort it out for me, so I didn't have to take the journey." She rested her head on his chest. "Ali, there is no point avoiding the past. It will just follow you around for the rest of your life," stated Ben. "Yes, it gets easier to get something new and put it on top of what it is you want to hide, but it's so much better if you get rid of the thing that you no longer want and create space for something new." Ben pulled her in close. "But you won't be going through it alone," he soothed. "I will always be here by your side, unconditionally and eternally loving you." He kissed her and Ali began to feel relief. "It always seems so doable when you say it," she said. There was a sudden smash from downstairs. Ali and Ben looked at each other. "I guess we aren't getting up quick enough for a certain little girl," said Ben. "It's okay," called a voice from the kitchen. A very sleepy Hugh sauntered into the bedroom. Ali sat herself up. "Would someone go and stop the tornado?" pleaded Hugh. "I beg you." He fell dramatically on the bed as Molly entered the room. She was balancing a cup in each hand, watching the fluid slosh precariously around the edges. Ben climbed out of bed and made his way around to Molly. He took the cups from her. "Thank you," he said. Molly promptly turned on her heels and ran back downstairs into the living room to pack the last of her things. Ben handed Ali the other cup as Hugh tried to sneak into Ali and Ben's bed. "Oh, no you don't," warned Ali. "Go and get dressed. You can sleep on the flight, and Jane will be here soon." Hugh hung his head low and wandered off to do what he was told. "It's going to be a long day," sighed Ali, sipping her tea, "but I will give her dues. She does make a very good cup of tea." Ali reluctantly set down the cup, climbed out of bed and got dressed. Ben and Ali and Hugh finally made their way downstairs to pack the last of their things. Hugh, is there anything you would like boxing up and posting back to the ranch? Ali asked as they walked into the kitchen. Hugh yawned in response. I'll take that as a no then, she said, ruffling his hair. They found Molly sitting on her bag by the front door, playing with her locket. Well, we're not going to forget you, said Ben as he knelt down in front of her. Her intentions were written so clearly across her face. Molly gave a weak smile and hugged Ben tightly. Knock, knock, said Jane as she came through the front door. Oh, I guess you are all ready to go then, she said, peering down at Molly. Yes, we are, replied Molly. She unravelled herself from Ben, picking up her bag and marched across to the car. Ben reached across, stuffed his toothbrush inside his bag and followed Molly. Hugh was next to arrive. He softly waved a hello to Jane before grabbing his bag and getting in the car. What a lively bunch, said Jane sarcastically. Ali then came into the hallway. She was frantically scanning the house and seemed nervous. Hey, earth to Ali, called Jane, waving her hand in front of her eyes. Jane grabbed hold of Ali's shoulder. It's going to be all right, she soothed. I'll keep an eye on the place just like before and let you know of any emergencies. Ali was in shock. It was so much harder to leave this time, perhaps because she no longer wanted to flee. Okay, you're right, said Ali. It's all going to be fine. She didn't believe a single one of her own words. Jane picked up Ali's bag and made her way outside. Ali slowly followed and put her hand anxiously on the handle. The house became a time capsule of her past yet again, patiently waiting for her to return. Ali closed the door with a bang and turned the key. I'll save that gremlin for another day, she whispered to herself, as the lock clicked and the house became silent. Ali climbed into the front seat, closed the door and put on her seatbelt. Right, ready, she said, clapping her hands determinedly together. Jane glanced across and shook her head. You're a rubbish liar, Ali, Jane said with a smile. Oh, come on, drive, lady, Ali instructed, signalling for Jane to move forwards. Jane politely obliged, sensing that it wasn't time for any more jokes. The car was silent except for the sound of Hugh snoring in the back. He had fallen asleep on Ben's shoulder. Molly watched the road get busier and busier as they neared the airport. She felt the relief wash over her. She was ready to leave what once was and delve into her new life that awaited her. Hey, buddy, Ben gently shook Hugh. We're here. Hugh sleepily lifted his head as Jane slowed the car and steered it into the drop-off lane. Jane tapped Ali on the knee. Here we go again, she whispered. Molly climbed out. Come on, everybody. If we're quick enough, we may be able to have a hot chocolate before we get on the plane. She made her way to the boot of the car and Hugh sluggishly slid out and joined her. It was great to finally meet you, Jane, said Ben warmly, and I guess next time I'll see you will be at the wedding, he added as he gave her a hug. Can't wait, replied Jane excitedly. I'll be the first one on the next flight as soon as you tell us the date. It will be a day to remember, she stated with eager anticipation. Ali made her way round to the front of the car and wrapped Jane in a huge hug. Thank you for always being there for me, she sobbed. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Ali began to cry harder. Oh, come on, you, urged Jane. I think you are doing pretty well without me, she added as she gestured towards Ben. Everything is going to be all right now. Ali looked up and wiped away her tears. You know what? I think you're right, Jane. You're welcome to come over any time, she offered. The door will always be open and kettle always on. Ali took the bag that Ben was handing to her. Jane nodded. I'll see you on the big day, she said with a wink. By the way, when is that? She asked. No, don't you start as well, warned Ali. I need a rest. One dream at a time, she said playfully, wiggling her finger at Jane. Let me just get settled into my new family life first. Ali shook her head and followed Hugh and Molly into the airport. See you very soon, Jane, Ben mouthed with a thumbs up. Jane giggled with excitement as she got back into her car and drove off. They joined the queue just as checkout opened. Good morning, ma'am. May I please have your passport? Said a friendly lady from behind the desk. Ali slid the passports across and Ben lifted the bags onto the conveyor belt. Did you pack your own bags today, ma'am? Asked the lady. Ali nodded as Hugh and Molly began to make their way towards security. Lovely. Well, here are your tickets. Have a great flight, she said as she handed back the passports with the plane tickets tucked inside. Ben took hold of Ali's hand as they followed Hugh and Molly. You know, the last time I checked in there, you were just a thought, a dream, a wish. And now you're holding my hand as we head home, Ali said in amazement. Life is magical, but if we keep believing, replied Ben affectionately. They made their way through security. Molly held her breath, hoping that the scanner wouldn't beep. Who's up for some hot chocolate? Asked Ben. Yes, I am, answered Molly before Ben had barely had chance to finish the question. With cream and marshmallows on it, Molly rubbed her stomach in anticipation. Hugh was now feeling more awake, and he began to peer into the different shops as they walked by. He took in the array of goodies and sparkly objects, but it was his boots by the front door of the ranch that he longed for the most. I'll go and fetch the hot chocolates while you guys take a seat, offered Ben, and he disappeared into the throng of people, all with the same thing in mind, apparently. Hugh, Molly and Ali found some seats and they watched the planes take off. I wonder where they're all going, Hugh pondered curiously. Ali glanced across. Anywhere and everywhere, she said. Every destination on the planet is only a flight away. She winked at Hugh and his adventurous side. Here you go, everyone, said Ben as he arrived back with a tray of hot drinks. I went for the ones with extra toppings, seeing as we're celebrating, he said as he sat down next to Ali. They raised up their hot chocolates. Here's to the dream team, said Hugh proudly, for overcoming all, but most of all for doing it together. They all sipped their drinks and made as more and more people filtered through into the waiting area. Ali kept a keen eye on the check-in desk. The air stewardesses had started to get people into position, ready to load up the plane. You best drink up, she said, gulping down the last of her hot chocolate. I think they're going to announce that we can board soon. Ben looked in the same direction as Ali. Molly and Hugh tipped up their cups and stuck out their tongues to get the last drops of melted cream. Finished, they said in unison. Gate 17 is now open for boarding, said an efficient voice on the tannoy. Could first-class passengers please make their way to the desk first, and then all other passengers will be announced by seat. Come on, you guys, said Ben as he stood up. We best get going. Ali looked up at him. There's no rush, she replied. We won't be boarding just yet. Ben smirked. Come on, Hugh and Molly, let's board the plane. Ben, wait, said Ali with a little more urgency this time. Boarding is for first-class passengers only. Ben pulled out her passport and held her ticket in front of her eyes. Yes, that's correct, and that means you. Ali's mouth dropped open in shock as Ben ushered her towards the desk. He handed over the passports and tickets while Ali had looked from him to the ticket and back to him again. But how? When? She finally managed to stammer. Ben took hold of her hand as they walked down the tunnel, not saying a word. Good morning, said a very smiley stewardess. If you would like to follow me, she glanced at their tickets and guided them down the aisle. Ali melted into her seat. She felt like a queen. I wonder what will be waiting for us back at the ranch, Hugh pondered as they followed the stewardess. Molly slotted into her seat by the window and looked at Hugh straight in the eye. I don't know what is around the next corner, she said, but I know now that no matter what it is, I have got, she paused a moment, the strength to succeed. So, that's the end of the fourth book in the Universal series, and we will be beginning the fifth book in the Universal series, A Ring of Rejoicement.